The message arrived at 4:47, in the dead zone of a Friday when the office had already emotionally clocked out. Daniel Reyes almost didn't open it. His cursor hovered, then clicked mostly out of habit. Sender: Maya Illich. He hadn't heard that name in 8 years. Not since the two of them had been the kind of friends who shared vending machine dinners and 2 a.m. panic about exams that, in hindsight, hadn't mattered at all. The email itself gave almost nothing away. Daniel, I know this is out of nowhere. I'm hosting something at my family's place this weekend. Old friends, no big explanation, just come. Car and room are handled. Let me know by 6
M.
No context. No reason. Just an open door and a closing clock. He was still staring at it when his phone lit up with a text 4 words long. There's something you should know. Something about that line, not dramatic, exactly, just certain, made the decision for him before he'd finished thinking it through. He typed back 2 words and hit send before he could talk himself out of it. I'm in. He didn't know it yet, but he'd just traded a quiet weekend for something that would outlast it by years. Saturday, 8:04 a.m. A car was already idling outside his building when Daniel came down, sleek, black, unbothered by the fact that it was Saturday. The driver handed him a sealed envelope before he'd even said good morning. Just you today, the driver said, like it was a fact worth mentioning. Inside the envelope, a schedule with no letterhead, no logo, no name attached to any of it. Depart 8 o'clock. Arrive 11:30. Reception 1 o'clock. Presentation 7 o'clock. Presentation. The words sat oddly in his stomach the whole ride out of the city, past the point where skyscrapers gave way to hills, and the hills gave way to gates, real ones, iron, taller than the car. Beyond them was a property that looked less like a house and more like a rumor, manicured grounds, a fountain catching the noon light, a small fleet of cars that all looked more expensive than his own. Inside, the foyer was already loud with the particular energy of people who don't yet know why they've been gathered. Daniel recognized faces from a decade back, some instantly, some only after a second. Searching look. Everyone wore the same faint, unspoken question. Then he saw Maya near the staircase, working the room with the practiced warmth of someone used to hosting things. When their eyes met, though, the smile that reached him wasn't the hosting one.
It was older than that. Realer.
You came, she said, crossing to him. Your invitation left me no choice but curiosity. She laughed, but it didn't quite land the way a normal laugh does. There was something underneath it, coiled and waiting. Give it until tonight, she said. It'll make sense. Before he could push further, she pressed a small card into his hand and moved on to the next arrival. 4 words, printed plain. Welcome back. It's time. He turned the card over, as if the back might explain the front. It didn't. The afternoon dissolved into introductions and half-formed theories. Everyone had a version of the same story, a strange invitation, no explanation, a promise that answers were coming. Nobody, it turned out, knew more than anyone else. Whatever this was, Maya had built it carefully enough that no one guessed held the whole picture. By 7, the guests filed into a hall on the west side of the estate, rows of chairs, a stage, a screen taller than the door they'd walked through. The lights dropped. Maya took the stage into a silence that felt earned rather than imposed. You've spent all day wondering why you're here, she said. You deserve the answer. The screen woke up behind her. A photograph, a knot of college students on a campus lawn, 10 years younger, 10 years less certain of anything. Daniel found himself in the frame before he found the memory of it being taken. More images followed. Whiteboards covered in half-legible plans, a cramped room lit by one bad lamp, faces he hadn't thought about in years. A small project. He remembered it now, a scrappy effort to get second-hand computers and tutoring into a couple of underfunded schools nearby. At the time, it had felt like homework with better company. Most of you probably think that project quietly died after graduation, Maya said. It didn't. The screen shifted, headlines now, growth charts, a logo that had clearly outgrown its origins. A murmur moved through the room like wind through wheat. What had started in that cramped room, Maya explained, had become something that now reached students in more places than any of them could have imagined that year. You built the foundation, she said. I never forgot that. The final image was a list, every name in the hall on it, Daniel's included. We're launching something new, Maya said. A foundation properly this time. And every person in this room is being asked to help lead it. The applause that followed wasn't polite. It was stunned. Nobody left their seats right away. The news needed a minute to become real. Daniel sat with the words founding member turning over in his head, unable to decide whether they felt like an honor or a summons. Dinner, later, was served in a ballroom that opened onto the gardens, and the mood in the room had visibly changed. Less "why am I here?" more "what do we build first?" Old classmates traded stories and half-formed plans in the same breath. Daniel ended up seated beside Maya. For a while, they didn't talk about the foundation at all, just the years, the jobs, the places life had taken them since the last time they'd shared a table. Eventually, he asked the question he'd been circling all day. Why me, though? You could have filled this room twice over. She considered it for a second before answering. Because when the project was about to fold, no funding, everyone ready to walk, you were the one who said don't. He frowned, reaching for the memory. It came back thin, worn at the edges. I barely remember that. I do, she said. It was one conversation. A few sentences. It kept us going for another semester, and that semester is the reason any of this exists. Small moments matter more than people realize, she added, and the line stayed with him longer than he expected it to. Sunday brought workshops instead of speeches, ideas moving fast across whiteboards again, a decade later, and somehow no less scrappy. Scholarships, tech grants, community centers. By the afternoon, the room didn't feel like alumni anymore. It felt like a team that had simply taken a long pause. Watching it happen, Daniel felt something he hadn't felt in a while. Not nostalgia, exactly, but momentum. The version of Monday waiting for him back home suddenly felt very far away. By evening, no one wanted to leave, though everyone eventually would. On the terrace, under a sky doing its best impression of a painting, Maya thanked the group one final time. I didn't know how many of you would actually show up, she admitted. Every one of you did anyway. Envelopes went around, not contracts, just handwritten notes. Daniel's read simply, "Thank you for believing in this before anyone else did." He read it twice. Something about it recalibrated a decade of assuming that effort, once spent, was also forgotten. Near the garden path, before the car came to take him home, he found Maya one last time. 3 years, she said, when he asked how long she'd been planning this. I wanted it to actually land. It landed, he said. They stood there a moment, watching the light go orange and then gone. So, what's next for you? She asked. A week earlier, the answer would have been instant and small. Back to work, back to normal. Now it just sat open. Honestly?
No idea, he said.
And I'm okay with that. Good, Maya said. That's usually when the good stuff shows up. The ride home felt shorter than the ride out, though the road was the same. What had changed was harder to name. Not his apartment, not his routine, but the quiet sense that Friday's ordinary email had rearranged something in him that Monday wasn't going to put back.